My books, The Origin of Names, Words, and Everything in Between, volumes 1 and 2, are available to purchase from most major booksellers in all major formats. Order your copies today so you can enjoy these books for yourself and help support the channel.
The United States of America is a nation which has earned a lot of nicknames for itself. The land of the free, the land of opportunity, the melting pot, just to name a few. In fact, certain areas of the nation have nicknames unto themselves, from geographical ones like the Pacific Northwest to the dubious Midwest, to its many belts like the Bible, Rust, and Jello Belt. Most of these nicknames are somewhat self-explanatory and don't provoke all that much conversation. Though one nickname for a part of the states in particular has created all kinds of conversations, that being the name this video is all about. Dixie, that is also known as Dixieland, Dixie's Land, and Dixie Alley. That latter name, however, is used more often in relation to tornadoes, but for this video I'll be referring to it most of the time as Dixieland, as that's the name I'm most familiar with. Whatever you choose to call it, Dixieland and its many alternative names is a part of the states you might have heard of before, even if you aren't from the country, like myself. It's also a name with a lot of imagery attached to it. The idea of what Dixieland is, it probably conjures up a different kind of image in everyone's mind. While we all have an idea of what Dixieland is, a simple idea is about as far as it goes for some of us. It's a place that isn't fully understood to a lot of people. The first thing a lot of people debate about the name is where it actually applies to. There isn't one defined geographic area or set of states that the term does actually apply to. The broadest definition of where Dixieland is that it's the southern states. This includes Kentucky, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. As mentioned, that's the broadest definition. I'm sure there are people watching from one of these states who don't think it should be considered part of Dixieland. Conversely, there are probably people watching from states I didn't mention who think they're part of Dixieland too. It's a really debated subject, so let me know what you think down below. The origin of the term Dixieland is also debated just as much as to what actually constitutes Dixieland. The OED's earliest recording of the term comes from 1859, so we can gather it was coined sometime prior to this. There are multiple theories around the origin of the term Dixieland. These range from probably false to probably the truth. One of the most debated etymologies is that Dixieland was originally the last name of one Johann Dixie, an 18th century slave owner who lived in Manhattan. As the story goes, he was actually a nice slave owner, relative to other slave owners of the time I suppose, but eventually sold some of his slaves to people somewhere in the southern states. His former slaves who were now in the south were now living in far worse conditions. Apparently one of the slaves remarked about just how good they had it up in Dixie's Land, and from here the name was born. This is hotly debated for a number of reasons. First off, because in this story, Dixie's Land is actually referring to Manhattan, and while the location of Dixieland is debated, I don't think anyone would argue that New York State is a part of it. The other issue with this story is that there's staggeringly little evidence to back it up. Another etymology for Dixieland with a dubious etymology is that comes from a Philadelphia-based minstrel performer of the 19th century who named himself Dixie. Likewise, there's not much evidence to back this one up either. Not all ideas for the origin of the name relates to people, however. One of the more believed theories is that the name might have been inspired by a banknote. The Citizens Bank of Louisiana had their own banknotes, with the $10 bill featuring the French word for 10 on the back of it. 10. This is because of Louisiana's deep ties with the French language, and as this state is in the south and to many the definitive Dixieland state, it makes sense as to why this note could inspire the name for the wider area. Though, once again, not everyone is convinced by this etymology. The etymology I personally believe in most, however, is that the name derives from a very specific line that underscores this part of the United States. The Mason-Dixon Line. This is a survey line which was established by surveyors Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, set up between 1763 and 1767. It came into being due to a border dispute between the British colonies who resided in the land at the time. This boundary settled the dispute into what land belonged to who. In modern times, it is actually a demarcation point across 4 states, with Pennsylvania to the north of it, Delaware to the east of it, and Maryland and the Virginias to the south of it. While established in the 17th century, it was only in 1820 when the term Mason-Dixon Line was first officially used. It may be an imaginary line which appears on maps, but it has taken on a life of its own somewhat. The Mason-Dixon Line is seen as something of a symbolic dividing point in the states, especially in relation to the older east coast of the USA. It is seen as the boundary where the north ends and the south begins. With this image for itself, it's easy to see why everything south of the Mason-Dixon Line would have become named Dixieland in its honor. Though what's interesting is that Maryland falls under the line. yet it's not really seen as part of Dixieland all that much. In fact, Washington DC as a whole is below this line too, which also isn't often included. These are the leading theories as to where the term Dixieland comes from, and like I said, there's disputes between all of them. I personally believe the Mason-Dixon Line theory the most, but that's just me. The Mason-Dixon Line is a really interesting oddity in the world of US geography. I just wish there was a video with more information about it out there or something.
Well, you know what? There is.
Oh yeah? And where can I find it? Also, how did you get in here?
I have my ways. Also, it's probably on YouTube.
What? Like on your channel?
Definitely.
Well, did you post a video then?
I did. I think your viewers should watch it after they're done watching your video, of course.
Okay, well, cheers for joining us. My viewers just saw you, so I guess I don't have to let them know now.
And with that, my work is done.
Huh, that was weird. Like, how did it even get in here? Anyway, while we aren't entirely sure as to where the name came from, we have a pretty good understanding as to how the name became so popular. And its rise in popularity was thanks to jazz. Yep, the musical genre that's often described as America's greatest cultural gift to the globe. And that's understandable. Jazz is incredible. To understand this, we need to understand that jazz originated within Dixieland, specifically via the African American communities in New Orleans in the state of Louisiana. For one reason or another, Dixie appeared in a lot of jazz songs, which then extended into American folk music in general too. Old songs that feature Dixie include I Wish I Was in Dixie, Dixie Blossoms, and When They Build That Dixie Highway. Dixie and the image the South picked up for itself was used in abundance in jazz and country music in the late 19th and early 20th century, though perhaps the people who really blew up the term were the original Dixieland Jazz Band. Yes, that's spelled with 2 S's instead of 2 Z's. They are seen as the first truly successful jazz band and cemented many of the features of the genre, and since then, Dixieland jazz has become a subgenre of jazz unto itself. Seriously, these guys were huge for jazz and music as a whole. It's from here that Dixie and Dixieland became a long-established and popular nickname for the southern part of the USA. Yet, that name of Dixieland hasn't stood the test of time all that much. This is because of the giant elephant in the room I've been avoiding up to this point. The Confederacy. This was a breakaway state that was composed of states in the South, including Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Florida, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, and Kentucky. They were of course the losing side of the American Civil War, and their main motive was to maintain the use of slavery in the nation. From the list of states mentioned that were part of the Confederacy, you can clearly see they're very much the same states which are part of Dixieland. This means the name of Dixieland has become somewhat synonymous with the negative ideas of the Confederacy, slavery, black and white minstrels, all that stuff that doesn't really gel with today's ideas. It's because of this that the name of Dixieland has dwindled in popularity. In many ways, it's a term that many Americans want to brush under the rug. Perhaps the most noticeable example of the term Dixie being snuffed out came in 2020. It was when the famous band the Dixie Chicks decided to drop the Dixie part of their name and instead go by just the Chicks. This was in relation to the mass protest against police brutality towards black people which happened in the wake of George Floyd's death. Though of course, while Dixieland might seem like it's on its way out, the term definitely does still have its supporters. People who link the term not with the Confederacy and slavery, but link it with some of the more positive qualities the southern states have. The idea of a humble, simpler time, and that renowned southern friendliness that this part of the nation is renowned for. And of course, it's a term linked with some really good jazz. There's a lot of debate over this term, and how it should be used, if it should be used at all, and I'm sure many of you have opinions on it, which you will have a nice civil discussion about in the comments down below, like I know you can do. But at the end of the day, I'm not American. I can't fully comprehend the ideas and feelings this name may evoke in someone from the States, whether they be from Dixieland itself or from anywhere else in the country. If only I had an actual American I could get on screen to explain their thoughts on the name.
Well, I'm not so sure I have any thoughts on the term Dixie, to be honest.
Oh, you're back. Though I guess I was just wishing for an American to appear, so I guess I had it coming. You were saying about Dixieland?
Yeah, we don't really say Dixieland anymore over here.
So you don't think Dixie is an offensive term in any way?
For many, it definitely is, but I don't see the term going away anytime soon. Besides, it's like in hundreds of country songs.
Huh, I see.
Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I have my own video to plug. Gotta go.
And just like that, he's gone again. You know, I think that was Mr. Beat, fellow educational YouTuber and all-round swell guy. He mentioned something about having his own video on the Mason-Dixon Line. You know what'd be really cool? If we released our videos at the same time and we could plug them in each other's videos. No, wait, that's exactly what we're doing. Well, you heard the man. Go watch his amazing video on the Mason-Dixon Line. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm Name Explain YT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.